Okay, hello everybody. We're gonna talk today. Well, Brian and I were sitting in the office. We were scrolling through. We're taking a break from TikTok.
I thought you were gonna say scrolling through TikTok, and I was like, no, we weren't this time.
We're taking a break from TikTok, and we have migrated over to Reddit today to find some information that we could chat about that we found really interesting. And honestly, it was one of the first things that came up on Reddit was this article from The Hill, which is like a Washington-based. If you're not familiar with The Hill, it's like a Washington-based publication. It's a very, it's like a very widely trusted, as unbiased as any news publication could probably be. In the world at this moment.
Yeah.
And really sort of like a really trusted publication within political circles, both left and right, and in Washington. Anyway, so they published this article on a report that came out of the Commonwealth Fund. And it was it was a report that was basically comparing healthcare in the U.S. to other high-income countries. And this report came out on August 4th. We're filming this on August 10th today.
Ish.
Okay. So just a little under a week ago, this report came out. So specifically comparing the U.S. to other high-income countries.
I think it's August 12th today, but
whatever fucking date it is. It's whatever. It's whatever date
came out
it
like
is.
last week.
It's August 2021. And so in this report, there's 11 countries total. And there are a number of different criteria that they are looking at, and each country is ranked in that criteria, in that specific criteria where they stack up. And then there is the overall ranking of the countries relative to the others. So let me just give you a quick rundown of the countries that are involved here. You've got Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, UK, US. The UK is, of course, we all know, a bunch of confusing countries within its own country.
So basically the countries that Donald Trump would refer to as not the shithole countries.
Right. Did he say that at one point?
The president tonight apparently uncorking another astonishing statement, complaining to lawmakers in the Oval Office about protections for immigrants. Why do we want these people from, quote, all these shithole countries here?
He called a group of countries shithole countries, which is crazy because he is a fucking shithole as a person.
But it's not crazy because it's him.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So of these 11 countries, the U.S. is last in healthcare.
Yeah. Is that surprising?
It's surprising. This is what's surprising, and what you and I have been talking about over the past couple of hours. It's surprising relative to the amount of money that the U.S. spends on healthcare, which is a massive, massive sum of money. Mm-hmm. Okay. So one of the criteria was healthcare system performance relative to spending. And the U.S. is like drastically in last. But the U.S. far outspends every country. Okay. So the measure in which we talk about this is how much money does the country spend on healthcare relative to GDP? Mm-hmm. Okay. So GDP in gross domestic product, GDP is different for every country. Smaller countries with smaller populations have smaller GDP, like total money GDP. Mm-hmm. But this is money spent relative to GDP. So the US, so all these countries, the 10 countries other than the US. Mm-hmm. Sorry, were you about to say something there?
I was just going to say, it's funny because I can't help but think about Formula One. So in Formula One,
love Formula
you've got
One.
like the for people who don't know, it's amazing. If you don't think you like Formula One, watch the TV show on Netflix, Formula One Drive to Survive, and you'll all of a sudden love Formula One.
I wish this was sponsored by Drive to Survive.
It should be. And the thing is that there's really two top teams in Formula One. There's Mercedes and Red Bull.
Yeah.
And part of the reason, one of the primary reasons why they're the best team is because they also have the biggest budgets.
Massive budgets.
And so you would think, like anecdotally in this instance, the more money you have, the more money you spend on something, the better it should be, right?
Yeah, right.
Yet the US is ranking last out of these 11 countries in 4 of the 5 categories.
Yeah.
And they're spending more money per capita than anybody else.
Right.
That's crazy.
So the amount that they're spending is crazy. So you've got so the amount that they're spending is all these countries, the 10 countries other than the US, they basically range between 9 and 11% of GDP is between 9 and 11% of GDP.
That's our annual budget.
They spend on healthcare every year. Okay. The US spends 17%. Now the US has a lot more people than a lot of these countries, but still it should be relative. You know, you'd think that it would be relative to the other big countries that are wealthy and have large populations. You know, countries like France, Germany, the UK. The UK is a massively densely populated area, and I mean, we all know the NHS is pretty world renowned for the healthcare service that they have in the UK. So they spend 17% of GDP. Now, the US GDP is $21.5 trillion every year. So that's basically what the United States, all the companies, everything that the US produces in a year, money-wise, accumulates to $21.5 trillion. And 17% of that is about just shy of $3.7 trillion.
And with a population of about 350 million people, that works out to be about just over $10,000 per person per year that they're spending on healthcare.
Right. Now, performance relative to spending, it's like, so on the graph, and we'll put up some of these graphs in the video. On the graph, it's the top performing country, and then like a kind of like a slow decline down to from first to 10th, and then it drops off a cliff. And you've got the US down at the bottom. Like they just massively underperform in healthcare. I mean, so this is the biggest kind of mark that stands out to me in this. And obviously we'll have links to description to the Commonwealth Fund report in the video. So you'll be able to go there and scroll through this and see all these things. And we'll chuck a couple of the images up on the video, but as we go through it, but the thing that jumps out to me the most is how can you have, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. It's massively misspent money. I mean, when you think about government bureaucracy, I think you think about the US, you just think about things that grind and never get done. And how do you spend so much money and not achieve good healthcare outcomes relative to other countries?
I think that the answer is, and it would be interesting to look into this because I haven't had time to go in and look at the different, because really it's not just about bad spending, it's about bad systems.
Right.
So like the United States is primarily a private healthcare system. Canada, primarily public. The UK, a 2-tier system where there's a mix of private and public. So it's really like, it would be interesting to look at these top 11 countries and see how, look at the different systems that are in place in each one of these countries and see what's working. Because the thing that I find so fascinating about countries around the world is that there are great examples all over the place of systems that are working much better than systems that exist in countries that aren't looking elsewhere to say, what could we do that other places are doing that are doing it better. And there's the reason why I think this way is because of it was a Michael Moore's documentary, Where to Invade Next.
Yeah.
Like it just makes sense. Like why not look to other places and say what's working? Because from these numbers, it should be fairly obvious that the US is very inefficiently spending their money, and probably with the same investment could be performing much better. They should be the number one country on all of these in all of these areas.
Yeah, they should
not.
be. And I have a bit of a theory about that, and it sort of goes back. I mean, America, and especially America, the like post World War II America, America of the last 100 years, and especially post World War II America is very much, even on both ends of the political spectrum, personal rights and freedoms are so incredibly central to the belief system of Americans. And I'm painting broad strokes here, obviously, but it's really at the core of being born in America, is that you are afforded incredible levels of individual rights and freedoms. And so psychologically, Americans feel differently about others than a lot of other countries do, who have more socialist style governments, such as Canada. Like relative to the U.S., Canada is a much more socialist political process. So basically, and this is all tying back to, I went to school in the U.S. for 2 years when I was in high school, when I was at a time in my life where I was like very, very open to new ideas and thinking, and my life was changing in really big ways. And again, I don't want to paint with like massive broad strokes with this, but there is definitely a sense that there are more people in the US that are convinced, even in the face of evidence, that however they're doing it is the way to do it.
Yeah, totally.
And that I think comes from this super, super deep-seated core belief system of personal rights and freedoms, which is good. That part is really good. But I think it's a negative outcome of that just happens to be that you are less willing to look outside of yourself and look to other systems, other countries to find solutions.
Well, and it seems like it's a primary trait in a society that is focused on that is ultimately governed by capitalism, because a lot of people think on an individual level, like if I work hard enough, I will make it. I can be successful. I can earn money to pay for myself. And if you're not working, if you're not successful and you don't have enough money, it's because you didn't work hard enough, and therefore you don't deserve access to certain sets of services that are sort of reserved for the more financially elite.
Yeah, but it's weird because from when you think about capitalism in the U.S. and you think about companies, especially in the last 20 years, tech companies coming up, companies like Facebook, Google, Oracle, Microsoft, any of these companies that have like really, really exploded, Amazon. If you go to any of those companies' pages on Wikipedia and you look at their list of mergers and acquisitions, I mean, you go to Google's page and look up and scroll down to where it's mergers and acquisitions. Dude, Google owns like 400 companies.
Yeah.
So there is a mentality among the people that have figured out how to build these ridiculously massive companies that make billions upon billions of dollars every quarter.
Yeah.
Microsoft, Apple, Amazon are all $1 trillion market cap companies. Okay. And they obviously have a sense of somebody else is doing this thing better than we are. Let's buy their company.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's go out and adopt. Let's not just adopt what they do. Let's just buy them and make them do it. Imagine if the US just started going like, let's buy Norway. And let's let Norway handle healthcare. Imagine if the U.S. That's something that I'm surprised Donald Trump didn't do, because if he pegged himself as such a businessman.
Didn't he want to buy an island that was owned by another country or something?
Owned by Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah, fuck.
He wanted to buy
definitely wanted to buy that.
He wanted to buy Epstein Island. Imagine if that was a thing where countries just started going, you know what? Like the U.S. started going, you know what? Norway does, so and so really, really well. Let's buy Norway, and then we'll put Norway in charge of healthcare, and we'll buy the UK and put them in charge of tea and crumpets.
I mean, you want to talk about like kind of conspiracy theories? That's
UK.
That's kind of what's happening with China and a lot of African countries because
Right,
they are
right.
building mines and infrastructure, and they're putting these countries in Africa so in debt to them that
That's right.
they'll basically, I mean,
That's a
they
wild
already
story.
financially own them.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a topic for another
It is, yeah.
for another
So-
podcast
so
and thing, but like that is a fascinating story.
I wanted to ask, like, what we didn't really dig into the 5 categories that that they're ranking these countries under. So can you just give us a quick overview of what those categories are and how the different countries performed?
Yeah. So there was access to care was one of them. I should say we're sitting here in Canada. Canada's 10th on the list.
Yeah, we
overall,
could use some work.
overall ranking. Okay. So and actually I'll tell you the overall ranking. Norway was first overall. Netherlands is second. Australia's third. UK is 4. Germany 5. New Zealand 6. Sweden 7. France 8. Switzerland 9. Canada 10. US 11. So access
we're
to
actually only one spot.
So for all the categories, I'll go through the U.S. and then I'll go through Canada as well, and I'll name the top. So we'll go U.S., Canada, and whoever's in first. So access to care, the U.S. is 11th. That makes sense to me from this totally privatized system that they've got. Well,
Can you give a quick like what is access, like one sentence or two sentences, like how do they qualify access to care? Like what does that mean?
that's a good question. I would have primarily thought access to care had like to do with the financial barrier to care,
Right.
but it might be like, hospitals per capita. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
or like clinics per capita or something like that. It could be one of those two. But nonetheless, U.S. is 11th. Canada is 9th. And number 1 is the Netherlands. Netherlands, they're doing lots of, they do everything so fucking well. Care process. This was the thing that the U.S. did really well in. The U.S. was second in care process. And I'm not exactly sure what they mean by care process because none of in this report, there's a whole bunch of exhibits and none of them really touch specifically on care process. So I'm not exactly sure what the definition of care process is. Obviously means that I would assume it means from like, once you do get access to care, then maybe the sort of like steps that you would go through to get care, like that's well thought out,
Yeah.
I guess.
So it would be like access to care is the way that you access care through the system, and then process would be how your experience is through that experience with care, I guess.
Yeah. And I feel like this is probably the breakdown. Administrative efficiency, I guess care process, Canada's 4th, and number 1 is New Zealand. Administrative efficiency, US is last in, and we're 7th, and Norway is number 1. So administrative efficiency, I feel like when you have when your bureaucracy and like your ability to streamline administrative tasks. I mean, I've been bogged down with admin work before. I'm sure you have as well.
Oh yeah.
It's a nightmare. I mean, nothing's worse than having an overwhelming amount of admin work to do. Like it's so tedious. It's so shitty. And no offense to anybody out there who works in admin, but like you're a special breed, especially if you like it. So I think I would guess that administrative efficiency, especially if you don't do it very well anyway, is the type of job where you've got a really sizable portion of that workforce who's not super jazzed.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting. I'm having this thought as you go through the third category there. Part of the other work that I do is in like data science and consulting research, specifically around workplace strategy. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we look at is we use a lot of data regressions to sort of like find out like, okay, if that thing, you know, is a shared trait for this group of the subjects or whatever, then what might that mean for other areas of their performance?
Right.
And I'm thinking immediately that both Canada and the United States seem to only perform well in care process right now. So that means that there's probably a large focus on care process, which probably is at the expense of, I mean, this could be a correlation where it's at that focus on care process it causes is it at the expense of, all the other areas,
like too much focus on strength and not enough on weakness.
Yeah, possibly. And specifically for the United States, I mean, ranking, what were they, number 1 in care process? Number 2. And then they're last across the board elsewhere. So it's like weird that you would perform so well in one area yet so poorly in the other areas.
Yeah.
So what's number 4?
Dude, Canada fucking sucks too, to be honest. We're 10th in a bunch.
Yeah.
Equity. Australia is number 1. Canada's 10.
Mm-hmm.
And the US is last in equity. Mm-hmm. And that really doesn't surprise me, especially for both Canada and the US. Both Canada and the US have massive historical problems with the way that we've treated populations in the US, Indigenous and Black. In Canada, Indigenous and Black people have been, really gotten fucked over. So that, and it's no surprise that, and honestly, like a big conversation of the past year has been how inequity is just so ingrained in.
How do we narrow these gaps?
In systems. They're just in there. And then healthcare outcomes, last for the US, 10th for Canada. That's a damn shame. And number 1 for Australia.
Really, it's funny because when we were first looking at this, we were talking about how poorly the US did, and really Canada is like,
this has really just become and I feel like as Canadians, no offense to our US listeners, we're like, and maybe you guys don't even recognize this because you're so engrossed with yourself, as we are now, which the irony is that we are too. We're like, oh man, we always get to have the last laugh with the US, but we fucking suck too. So we're right there with you.
You know what though? It's like the one thing, and the reason why we suck is how much do we spend per GDP?
GDP for us is just shy of 11%.
Yeah, see, compared to the United States is 17%. Like we're just not.
And
it seems
Canada?
like we're not. It's not the United States seems like it has an efficiency problem, in terms of, or more like how effective their spending is. For us, it seems like we might not be investing enough, and like even in if you look in Nova Scotia, like a lot of the facilities that we have, the infrastructure to support healthcare around here. It's not
5-star,
and it's not unobvious that we should be investing more in those areas. But,
So Canada's GDP is 1.7 trillion, which is hilarious that the United States' GDP is like 10 or 11 times greater than ours. So we're spending 10% of 1.7 trillion is what, 17 billion? 11%. So we spend probably about 20 billion or so. 20 billion on healthcare in relation to $3.7 trillion dollars that the US spends. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, all right, well, why don't we leave it there? Link in the description for this report. It actually is super interesting to go through and read. Like there's a whole, like it's basically a study. There's an abstract, there's conclusions, there's a whole bunch of information on a bunch of the different aspects that they looked at. I really think it'd be worth your while to go over and check it out. But until next time, that's it for us in the studio here. And
if you let us know what topics you want us to cover next, we love shooting these videos. We love doing some research and learning ourselves. Also, make sure that if you made it this far in the video, hit the like button, please. Please subscribe to the channel. We're putting a lot of effort into growing this. And also, if you just stumbled across this video and it's your first time watching, we host a podcast with our friend Jeremy, who's not here right now, and it releases 3 times a week, and you can check that over on any of the apps or services that you use to listen to podcasts.
Bingo.
See you next time.